much, James. And I'm excited to have the poets in the house and the readers, writers, poets who are part of the audience. You're very welcome. And those who are online, you're welcome too. Today we have 4 readers. And what I would like to do is to introduce everyone at once so that once I sit and the reading begins, it can flow seamlessly. But poets, feel free to add, to mention something, to frame your reading the way you would like it to be framed, or to mention anything that I may not have captured on the bios here, because it's your time, so feel free to use your time. Our first reader is going to be Danita Dodson, and she is the author of The Medicine Woods. We do have her poetry books here, and we do have this one available. So remember to buy the books, support the poets. And Danita is a poet, educator, and literary scholar. She is the author of 2 poetry collections, Trailing the Azimuth, which was her first book, and the second one, which is The Medicine Woods. She holds a PhD in English from the University of Southern Mississippi, and she specializes in 20th century literature. Danita's poems, prose, and scholarly articles have appeared or are forthcoming in Salvation South, Utopian Studies, Amethyst Review, and elsewhere. Combining a love of scholarship and diverse experiences, Danita has been a Fulbright Hays Fellow in Turkey, a literature professor in Nicaragua, and a Spanish teacher in Appalachia. She is a native of Smithville, Tennessee, where she hikes and explores local history connected to the wilderness. And again, the bios that went out to the public, they usually have the poet's website. So if you want to know more about Danita Dodson, feel free to click the link and read more about her work. And our second reader is going to be Elizabeth Wilson, author of Window Pens. Elizabeth Wilson is a tap dance enthusiast, chronic illness advocate, and rising voices of narcolepsy speaker. She lives with her partner and son in the North Carolina mountains, and she won the 2021 Patricia Doubler Poetry Award for her poem, Your Sister Brings Me an Orchard. She also received a 2022 NC Arts Council Artist Support Grant to promote her first book of poems, Window Pens, and I hope we get to hear poems from Window Pens today, and any other poems that you may choose to read. Window Pens won the 2021 Sappho's Prize in Poetry. Elizabeth's poems have appeared in Asheville Poetry Review, Cold Mountain Review, Intima, a Journal of Narrative Medicine, and South Dakota Review, among others. Again, her website is available, so feel free to visit her site and read more about her work. Our third reader is going to be Hilda Downer, and she is the author of Wiley's Last Resort. Hilda Downer is the author of 3 collections of poetry, most recent, Wiley's Last Resort, which is here at the store. And her second book, Sky Under the Roof, was a Nautilus Golden Poetry Winner. Hilda has taught English at Appalachian State University as an adjunct, while also working as a psychiatric nurse. She has an MFA from Vermont College, and her love of teaching poetry has been fulfilled as a volunteer in local elementary schools. She is a longtime member of the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative, the Appalachian Studies Association, and the North Carolina Writers Conference. She grew up in Bandana of Mitchell County, NC, and has 2 sons. She lives in Sugar Grove, North Carolina. And our last reader is going to be Las Pequeño Glazier, who is a woodland poet and multilingual creator of books of print, poetry, digital poems, theoretical texts, and performance works. Las has spent years writing, teaching, and roving heart spirit landscapes in Berkeley, Paris, India, Mexico, Cuba, Buffalo, and the Blue Ridge/Southern Appalachia. His publications include An Earthman, Pumpkin Seed, Algorithm, and Digital Poetics, The Making of E-Poetries. He lives and writes in the vitalizing biodiversity of the Smoky Mountains, and he's the author of Transparent Mountain, Eco Poetry from the Great Smokies, which we have available here, And again, his website is available on the link that we sent out to everybody. So feel free to visit his site and support our poets. Without taking so much time, let us welcome Danita Dodson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mildred. It's thanks to Stephanie out there somewhere in cyberspace. I am so blessed to be back in Asheville and Malaprop's reading with Loss and Elizabeth and Hilda, all of whom I admire very much. And I'm thankful too for all of you who are here attending in person and out there in the world. I'm going to be reading, as Mildred said, exclusively from my second collection, The Medicine Woods. This collection is very much about healing, about the healing that the wilderness brings to our bodies, our minds, our souls, our hearts, but also about the healing that the earth begs of us in this time of climate change. Don't have time to showcase all that today, so I encourage you to buy books so you can get the full panorama. Without further ado, I'm just going to step into the first poem of the collection, which is about a phenomenon we might remember in August 2017. And it reminds me of the unity and the connection that we can find in nature. Solar eclipse. In waxen light, the post-ecliptic woods are serene and sonorous with mystical kindness in the strange terrain harmonies of katydids and sparrows who never meet in song, and who, perhaps just like us, are humbled by living laterally on a planet whose comings and goings, though often predicted, still and still wondering. I fear, as we watched the darkness pass and saw the sun shine crown the moon with earth shine. Golden beams illumining the green forest, now like a floodlight as dawn reappears, a late afternoon gift of reawakening over the trees and the seas and the hearts of all of us during this rare reawakening, as health and happiness and promise pulse again from the bright song of earth. In these moments, the whole land pauses, bonded by an offbeat happening that urges us to recognize there's something larger, something more majestic and much wiser than ourselves, alight on a spinning globe. Quite a few of the poems in the collection are about the little creatures of the wild, just a zoom in to watch these little beings of the earth teach us something, and we can learn so much about ourselves just by watching. This poem is about an eastern box turtle that I meet often in my woods, but they're not really my woods as I showed in the poem. They belong to this creature I've named, Batik, which is the title of the poem. Often on serene morning walks I meet the wild old terrapin I've named Batik, because his shell and body are adorned with spirited patterns in brown and gold, seeming to dash and dance along the path, though his movement here is quite contained, bringing to mind how the human spirit too can bounce with the liveliest tempo, even while its flesh carapace reposes. So Batik sits immobile upon the trail that weaves through these dense woods, smack in the middle of where I amble, along this blue East Tennessee ridge. And when I kneel near him in calm awe, his yellow mottled head and feet choose never to withdraw inside the domed shield, his red eyes glowing knowingly bright. Still I wonder if he feels threatened by me. So I talk to him. May I share these woods with you, Batik? I am harmless. Am I? What choices will I make that somehow will endanger his piece of wilderness? Enigmatizing the earth he has long trod, fatigue reemerges over and over again as I saunter oftentimes along this path. His attachment to home, pure like mine, compelling me to consider him to be my totem, my message, my kindred. But I know his reappearance here has little whatsoever to do with me, because this really is his woodland instead of my own. A sense of place like that eastern box turtle also has seems to me a sure source of healing and can keep us connected to safe in the natural spaces. I come from a place, as Mildred shared with you, called Sneedville, Tennessee, and I'm going to share a little bit about that place. The place I was born. I've always seen the place I was born as a place apart. Its remoteness and its movement, as slow as molasses, mark it as the land that time forgot, or the place trapped in history, a 2 red light town in a valley hugged by mountain mamas, where our people bend and curve and glide our vows so elaborately that Siri and Alexa can never find what we're searching for. True story. Our Cherokee forebears prized the earth. Here is a summer hunting place, abundant in wildlife and forest health, and our diverse Melungeon ancestors quilted from the vivid pieces of the planet's places, ventured into this safe and secluded land that no one else seemed to want, where we've chosen to remain because we do. The place I was born gives sanctuary to the endangered species of river life, living freely in a land apart, in harmony with rare plants and birds along the undammed water's edge, as apartness sings a blessing and new songs preserved in old earth. So I consider again anew with pride this place touched by few over time, where I can still climb the 3 tiers of Elrod Falls, the ropes, my lifeline, as I watch the peregrine falcon perched in red oak and see my own heart alight in beauty. When we consider natural spaces, it's not all just about the spaces that bring us healing. It's also, it should be contemplation of the spaces that we need to heal. And so many of the poems in the Medicine Woods are reminders of what we're losing in the wild. And some of my readers have said, I turn downright angry in some of them. And we should be telling the truth about things like the 500 mountains since 2019 that alone in Tennessee have been demolished to surface coal mining. So I share a little bit in this poem called Mountain Melancholy. Days of swinging grapevines over churning crystal creeks are slipping into oblivion, and unsullied recollections of the joyful songs of countless birds are floating on the mountain mist, leaving the earth and drifting up toward eternal green pastures as an elegy of a way that's dying, like the farmland and the farmers are, whose old plows rust in forgotten fields. To wade in those crystal creeks again, wrapped in the honeysuckle breeze, would be balm in these grievous times, but so much has changed as the climate has changed. Though some water still trickles through this blue strip of hills, and though the earth still holds some soil and mountains ancient but ignored, with their mournful memories of chestnuts and monarchs, it has been said that you can't go home again, where the unadulterated echoes of springtime innocence and laughter drift along on the breeze's song. If only we had known back in our youth how pristine was the earth where we walked, how untroubled the skies. It's next poem is about nature trails in Holy Scripture. Doing a little hike in the Great Book. It's simply called Holy Trees. In these old wood pulp pages, I see a bright green and varied trail of trees to the revelation from the Genesis. Heroes and villains live in these sentences, but the trees are what capture me most. Speaking with golden tongues and trunks, bearing truth with vocal cords and roots. The story's an ancient one. God, trees, and humans, the oxygen, the breath. The tree of life, the sublime divine, is the mother tree that links and sustains all trees planted by the green gardener. And the tree of knowledge is a narrator, revealing all the truths of life and death, drawing to it humans who know little. Hence they're banished from the garden, and they and their kind ever after look for the shades and flavors of trees, their whispers and their strengths, seeking their wisdoms and their lessons, seeing in their branches the shape of God and the wonders of mighty possibilities. To hear the marching in the mulberry trees and the voice of being in a bush of fire, to meet the awe of the old oaks of memory, to sweeten tomorrow's waters with bark, to offer forgiveness incarnate upon a tree. Reading Holy Trees, wood and word, I too imagine I am a fruitful bough by a well with branches overflowing a wall, sapwood and pith, life force and knowledge, a woman as bold as Deborah, who has found her voice, her people, and her justice under a tree where birds nest. My story interwoven with layers, this poem, a palm branch. And I'm going to end with the last poem in the book. It's a call to all of us to do more for Mother Earth. It's simply called We. Living in dissonance, oblivious to our part in the grander ecosystem, we are that dust in the wind, that fragile freedom afloat, heedless of the impact of our choices, enormously unmindful of the fact that a single cup of morning coffee could equal the death of a songbird, that 1/3 of food supply is wasted uneaten when people starve, that fast fashion becomes fast cast-offs that the homeless could have gladly worn, that jettisoned plastics could establish residence in landfills for generations, to be unearthed by beings like Wally, left as primary sources of who we were, when what we could have left behind was a green forest or a clean stream. We forget we are nature, entangled ever more in its movements, concatenated with each other as well, in ways we can only begin to fathom. We are travelers here, rambling adrift, strangers on an earth created as a home we have borrowed from our children. Their place, which will diminish daily if we do not keep it well, if we do not keep each other well. Thank you. Sorry, I should be ready.
And it's just much easier to hold these things. because I'm always like, is this too close? Anyway, hi, I'm Elizabeth Wilson, and I just want to say thank you, Mildred, and all the poets here, Loss, Danita, who I just met, Loss, and my friend Hilda, who's from my neck of the woods. I kind of was feeling like I should bail on this because I am a hot mess, like literally hot right now. But Asheville is a really important place for me. And this place in particular, when I was, in 1989, scribbling in my journal at the cafe here. Asheville just represents this, I guess, the beginning of me finding my voice. And so it's a great honor to be here right now. I'm going to be reading mostly from my book Window Panes, which Mildred already discussed, and a few new ones at the end. No, I was supposed to start my timer. Okay. If I go over, somebody just buzz me like. So here we go. I'm going to actually I'm going to start by saying that I have, when I first was putting this book together, I heard this question over and over again. What is this book about? Or what is this book about? And it was surprisingly difficult to answer because really it's just a book of love poems, which I find in the poetry world, that's kind of not a good answer. People don't want to hear like, oh yeah, I write love poems. So, but really, truly, these are all love poems. So I will just see how it goes. I'd like to start with, I'd like to begin with the poem called Your Sister Brings Me an Orchard. And this is the first contest that I submitted to when I first, by the way, I was ill for a very long time. And ironically, when COVID hit, my most debilitating symptoms just began to remit, which is weird, but I'll take it. So I made all these promises to myself. I'm gonna learn German, I'm gonna learn how to tap dance, and I'm gonna try to put a book together with whatever scraps and fragments remain of all these years of illness. And I wasn't expecting actually to win a contest. But I started out with my very first submission when I began writing poems again, and I submitted Your Sister Brings Me an Orchard to the Patricia Dobler Award, which is through Carlow University and their Mad Women's Poetry Series. And I felt like, yeah, voices from the attic, because I felt like I was kind of in my own little attic there for a while. This boy really likes me. And I won. And then I was like, well, I gotta put a book together. And I won that. So it's kind of surprising in a way, because I wasn't really ready for it. But this is the poem that started it all. Your Sister Brings Me an Orchard. Sorry, I was rambling. This fly really likes me. Did you have the same fly? Your sister brings me an orchard. Each day after class, we sit on steps together and she pulls apples from her purple backpack. We talk about impact, the body in relation to space, in relation to the body, or the body in relation to itself, the body in relation to another body. I talk circles, like rings inside a tree suggesting growth, but I'm going nowhere. I suggest things. I don't indicate my need directly. I am more ashamed than afraid of judgment. Nights I sleep with you, I bend and crease myself into the sheets, the way I cover this paper with my hand. The next poem is called My Mouth is Penitent. I tried to appear casual. I tried to appear as casual as the woman beside me at the bar, the one whose black suit I've been hanging on to all evening. I'm afraid of conversations I will never have. I would tell her I want to kiss her, but my mouth is full of winter, dead leaves and clattering branches. There's nothing lush between my lips. I dream my teeth crumble into my hands. I should tell her I'm afraid of kissing, but she won't believe me. Instead, I read her lips, watch her tongue lick her finger, turning page after page of my biography. The next two poems describe the journey that my partner and I took moving from one coast to the next, from San Francisco to New York, from New York to North Carolina, and everywhere in between, eventually landing in the North Carolina mountains, across from here, over near Boone. It's called Getting There. We had been lovers 1 month shy of a year when we decided to leave the city. What you gave up for me, anonymity, your sense of safety. The day we decided to move, you planned our route, traced your finger along the Appalachian outline. You pointed to Mount Mitchell, informed me of its altitude, 6,684 feet, the highest peak east of the Mississippi. You said we should take our time getting there, study the geography, document the changing landscape, the rise and fall of elevation, the topography between us, here and now, then and there. The next poem is My Lover Searches for the Rental Car. It's dark in the parking garage. I wait on the curb while you search. Your fingers trail each car like braille. You come back empty-handed. Lean to kiss me. My chin inches forward. My eyes close the instant my lips brush yours. A reflex, as if only the blind can kiss. The next poem references a particular time when my partner was making a fairly long commute to teach in a North Carolina prison down the mountain. It gets its title from a conversation that we had in which she told me that sometimes she feels safer locked up than she does out in the world. It's called You Say You Feel Safer Locked Up. Our first year on the farm, I wouldn't let you go to the grocery store alone. I stopped whatever I was doing, clambered into the car beside you, believed my presence could protect you. Now, when you drive away to teach men in the Max facility down the mountain, I wonder if the state trooper idling on the overpass ramp will catch you in his speed trap. Will he notice your license marked female, your boy body in the driver's seat? I beg you to obey the rules. Traffic signs, speed limits. What I really mean, don't call attention to yourself. As if you could be visible only to me at night when the world softens and blurs. Following along in this theme, the next poem attempts to capture the anxiety I experienced every time my partner would travel down the mountain to teach in the prison. It's called When You Drive Away. I double check the locks, my watch. I count mileage in minutes, factor potential delays. 78 minutes down shoulderless roads through narrow rows of state-owned machinery. Bulldozers and drag lines gouge the alpine edge, while workers wearing orange safety vests juggle coffee cups and warning signs. Okay, I'm going to read, how about 2 more poems? Does that sound right? Okay. This poem harkens back to a time in the not so distant past when same-sex marriage was illegal. It's called My Marriage. We each have our sides. 6 years now without a license. I could leave easily, walk out the door, out of our childless lives. Nothing holds me to my side of the bed, my back to the wall. I cup you in my curled body, murmur under my breath. Yes, I do take you. Choose you. Vows we speak each time we share an avocado. You carve out the fruit, show me the hollow boat. And I would like to close with a new-ish poem. Ooh. Okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Is it The Unraveling or Yesterday Morning? Oh, okay. That was easy. It was unanimous. So the next poem is called The Unraveling, and it's going to be in the new, I don't know, maybe the next issue of South Dakota Review. The Unraveling. My mother slipped the yarn from its sleeve. She positioned me like a marionette, elbows bent, palms facing each other. She found the end and began wrapping left to right, periodically stopping to free a knot until the yarn was wound into a ball. Every skein we worked this way, winding and rewinding yarn from each of our hands, held and wrapped, tangled and untangled. Over and over we worked, stacking ball after ball in her knitting basket. It is this way with grief. No matter the shape, how neatly wound, one snag can pull it loose, and then the unraveling, and then the starting over again and again. Thank you so much. Where's my little mic person who said it? Thank you. My friend Hilda.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you to Mildred and the Malaprop staff for having these wonderful readings and wonderful poets that I love so much. Wiley's Last Resort is about the primitive campground atop Pine Mountain, Kentucky, formerly the defunct Pine Mountain Resort owned by Jim Webb, the late poet and activist for the environment and social justice. And it is about Jim. I met Jim in the late 70s when he and I were thrown together as Appalachian poets. He was co-founder of the Southern Appalachian Writers Cooperative. The acronym is SAWC. So I am a SAWCer, consisting of writers throughout the Appalachian region and its annual journal, Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, to offer a place of publication for poorly recognized Appalachian writers. SAWC offers readings throughout Appalachia, and we've had several here at Malaprops as a group and individually. Jim had several pseudonyms, but most SAWCers fondly refer to him as Wiley. He began using the pen name Wiley Coyote after the 1977 flood for his outspoken commentaries in a newspaper he helped establish. Allegedly due to his activism against strip mining and mountaintop removal for coal, he was burnt out multiple times. He was catapulted to regional fame when his poem, Get In, Jesus, was published in a college text in the mid-1980s. His sole book was not published until 2013 due to the efforts of collecting and editing poems by fellow SAWCer Scott Goebel. Instead, Jim printed the Get In Jesus poem on t-shirts and sold those at his readings. He got scared when an event at Wiley's Last Resort, he sold $6,500 worth. He thought the events were getting way too big. As a radio personality and director of WMMT Radio at Apple Shop in Whitesburg, Kentucky, he promoted writers, musicians, and artists by offering interviews, readings, and playlists. At Wiley's Last Resort, he hosted activist groups, environmentalists, writers, musicians, and artists of all types. His annual Pine Mountain Pink Flamingo and Tacky Lawn Ornament Soiree, a weekend of around-the-clock poetry readings and concerts, Tacky Lawn Ornament, campsite competition, cooking and sharing of food, and howling at the moon at midnight can only be described as contemporary Appalachia at its best. I try to show Wiley as a whole person in this book, which was hard to do in just one book. So a few poems doesn't give him credit as the hero who fought for the environment and the Appalachian people. Wiley's voice. This is the powder room where they stored dynamite. He spoke, stepping out of the concrete vault as the reverb of his voice inside overlapped his voice outside. Both voices closed so sharply that I noticed the emptiness of space and what it must be like to love someone who dies before you. Driving back from Kentucky, I find his radio show on WMMT
88.7. Distance begins to rust the voice, more powerful than the powder required to explode a mountain for coal. Losing reception, I listen to the static of silence that I remember from before I was born as the sound of infinity. Wiley tells the history of Highlander. You could look off this deck and see black cars line the entire edge of that wide field below, the FBI. Because of the carryings on of subversive activities like quilting, buck dancing, and Cherokee basket weaving. Highlander lets Sauk meet here probably because we ride against mountaintop removal and don't break anything. Way back, people for unions came to learn how to organize. During the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks was here. Martin Luther King Jr. probably stood on this very spot. His thoughts fused to these blue mountains, while noble thoughts in mountains still there, above the black cars directed toward him like torpedoes. The arrow. I asked Wiley what the worst thing he'd ever done was, and he had an answer handy. When I was a young'un, I shot my granny in the butt with an arrow. I wondered if she got mad. Nah, she was hanging out clothes, knew I was just playing. Even the worst thing Wiley has done is funny. That isn't true for everyone. I think of another granny when I was growing up, God-fearing and so good that you became good around her. Before she and her husband wed, she became pregnant. For that one thing, she lived her life with the undertow of shame. Shame is a kind of missing, who we would have been without it. It rusts from the inside out. Wiley had the ability not to regret, not to miss. Zen Buddhist monks never missed. So proficient at hitting the target, not to waste arrows during practice. They simply pulled back on the empty bow. Wiley goes to the highest peak. This was the first time I ever saw mountaintop removal. I lived right beside a strip mine, but mountaintop removal was a whole different species. White, so much white. Wiley's Jeep zips a polka dot dress of white trillium up the back of Black Mountain. He pulls over, steps out into the view. Mountains, pew after pew, face God. In comparison, it is heartbreaking to discern the next ridge that has timber felled haphazard as pickup sticks. Nearby, demolished mountainsides are covered with a chemical blue, the equivalent of milk of magnesia's eerie pink if it were blue. Unconvincing as an old TV commercial of a bald head undergoing spray paint to feign hair. The first rain will funnel this seed paint into gullies with debris ricocheting down a bowling alley for striking out the valley below. The top of Black Mountain, Kentucky is black. Coal extraction creates a moonscape too filthy for an American flag. The coal company has staked its claim in black and white with a grubby do not litter sign, the candle on the cake of Wiley's disgust. You would think that the highest peak in Kentucky would be protected. Final record. The needle floats over waves to produce sound. The wind across the pelagic variations of a long-range mountain view amplifies a kind of hum, a mantra. I held new album covers to my heart, studied every detail of artwork, made drawings of the musician photos, and memorized lyrics, active listening while the music played. Songs vibrant and abstract, different from anything before, became a part of my experience, my DNA, that I passed on to my sons. I've always seen the music in their movement, drawing with crayons or running past me. I could not explain a vinyl record to a caveman. I still can't get over fire. The scientific explanation falls short of the music that sails across a flat world, sometimes falling off. The way sound got in there, the way it gets out is magic. I cannot explain sound, or my mother playing piano, her self-taught ragtime style. She recorded with gospel groups on those thick 78s that my young brother tossed as a frisbee across the fields and shadows of loss. Sometimes the record held slant reveals a blackberry patch of scratches. Sometimes it breaks its own habit over and over a deep line, fixing itself even as I am on my way to the rescue. In the recording studio, two sound waves that hit head on cancel each other out. No sound at all, a dead spot. Wile E. Coyote promoted Appalachian musicians and poets, broadcast on his WMMT show, riding around listening to the radio with Wile E. Coyote. From the control room, he would switch on the intercom in the office to request a CD or something else forgotten. Is anyone there? He would ask. Interns, fondly tittering, would reply, no. No sound at all is hard to comprehend. That one sound plus one sound can equal zero. Live and let live, Wiley proclaimed, across frequencies that practice the same cursive exercise as the Blue Ridge Mountains, fading dark blue until lighter and lighter into the light blue sky, ringing outward forever. The lyrebird. 20 stories high, Wiley recalled traffic held up as the monster drag line crossed the highway. Before the drag line claws away the mountaintop to smother the dreams of valleys, there is the chainsaw. There are the fires. No time to harvest the timber in the rush to get the coal. I cannot get Wiley's line out of my mind, buzzsaws in the rain. Or the intimations of a lyrebird, its rainforest, like our Appalachian mountains, becoming extinct. Miniature recording studio with wings, the lyrebird's cover songs are so impressive that other species get fooled and drop by to go courting. Amidst this lovely repertoire, he bolts out an exact rendition of the disturbing prattle of a chainsaw. I want to hold this bird, a toddler taught to curse, to heal such visceral gnawing until replaced by the call of a whippoorwill, what connects our souls to the cool of night. Even as chainsaws butchered the rain, dilated pupils of umbrellas searched the above, and a precious bird sang deep within Wiley. Wiley came in and went out with a hunter's spoon. At Wiley's bedside in the cabin by Walden Pond, I said, "It's me, your favorite poet." He managed a smile and carefully prepared the words, "That's right." Wiley didn't think he was good enough to ask God why he had forsaken him. He'd asked why America would destroy the mountains and betray its people. He didn't ask for medication to ease his suffering. He thought he deserved the pain. In his Get in Jesus poem, crazed drunks mock the hitchhiker. What's it like dying on the cross? There is exhaustion before asphyxiation. There's thirst. Jesus was offered vinegar on a cloth tied to a stick. Wiley accepted a red popsicle with gratitude. Eyes fixed in Chain-Stokes respirations, it was time, I felt, for him and Katie to be alone. That night, the hunter's moon was bigger than the moon could be. Huge fist against the night. I wondered if Wiley might be on that barren landscape made familiar by mountaintop removal. He might take respite there to celebrate his view of what's left of Earth's green and blue, and to plan a soiree for other layover souls before that one giant leap into forever, the moon as Wiley's last resort. Thank you.
Not even that tall. So thank you, Malaprop. Thank you, Mildred, and thank you to the poets. Honored to be with you. So this is from Transparent Mountain, a kind of run through, which composed for this event, a run through. And starts instead of what do you think? That sound okay? Wait, like that maybe? Okay. Better? Oh, good, thanks. Okay, so I just do, they don't have titles per se, but I'll just go with page numbers. 3. The way birdsong echoes intertwined with spring-fed illumination of vibrant vernal dawn. Small creatures, well slept, bask in sun. Mountain laurel leaves reflect limber gloss. Pincushion moss, xylophagus fungi, sprouted grasses, sprigs of swamp dewberries, dappled light, butterfly woman's mesmeric, enlightened hermit nun smile. Maples tower over dazzled, innocent eyes of starry pine saplings. I laugh with polypore mushrooms in a whirl of mandala concentric patterns, delicate dervish, rosettes and overlapping clusters on caducous hardwood altars. In great winged updrafts, Autochthonous whirls spin small eddies where fragrant woods, millennial relics, cloud forest mists, crevices, and leaf mounds nurture microtopographical enclaves. Millions of nanoorganisms, fungi, bacteria, kaleidoscope stellar forms of life, all teeming intelligences on scales humans cannot perceive, gnats, beetles, no see-ums, all of one mind. 4, don't try to clear your mind. When thoughts race, watch the gaps between them. That transparent emptiness is solid. It is non-thinking, breath space, mind itself. Without spaces, no individual thoughts exist. Be grateful to see them. See each lacuna as transparent, where form sustains sentience. Silence shapes all words. Such is the clarity at hand, an ocean in its crevices. For the mountain cave poet Han Shan, it took 1,000 years to be read by the world at large, who once told me personally, if you are recognized in less than 1,000 years, you are not really a poet. Poems written on stone, sewn sounds, tone, ancient granite, geomorphologic landscape, eons molded, monzonitic granite skists sparkle, like Han Shan's rocks, starry flickered luminosity, smoky ridge, Shan Shui Du, cave sounding a sutra for the planet. There is no tomorrow, only today. There is no where to go. In fact, if there were, you are already here. 6, the planet on its knees, scorched, species annihilated, proof of the flawed conclusion of Descartes' monotheistic soul dredge, opting for deadly solipsistic delusions, egotism, self-identity, failed rational mind, his I think therefore I am. At odds with Arthur Rimbaud's later, I don't think one thinks me, or Whitman's I contain multitudes. The non-interdependent self turns out to not exist. It's not to be or not to be, but to interbe. No isolated I, but a convergence of myriad connections, not only to other humans, but we must find our place in the complex web of living systems with respect, spiritual awe, and reverence for the living world beyond us and beyond our species, as in Standing Bear's inclusive, loving kinship with all forms of life. No one is alone, and I is a drop in a vast, interconnected ocean of thought. It's the sum of all the drops, each indispensable, that makes the ocean whole. I'm going to do this, isn't that, what was that vice president that we had last time? They had to fly just while you're on. 94. Like all oceans, this phantom sea is the ghost of other ghost oceans. Like all universes, this universe is made of shards from a single blast of light. Our cells are unknowable, our soul a Blakean specter at death or asleep. We inhabit the shadow edge of postulation. A deep abyss lies beyond our speculation. The tenuous nature of it all means breathe now. At the end of each deep breath, the ocean waves resound, as if on a long chain swing. That moment you reach the extension of the pendulum arc, the exact position in which you, the pendulum bob, are fully integrated into the sky. The stillness lasts a second as a change of direction approaches. In that micro breath of time, you pause motionless in air, utterly weightless, free of all mass. In an instant, as if suddenly obligated by physical law, gravity pulls you from the sky. The suspended moment of stasis is where you truly are. It opens a panorama of mountain peaks. You drop the bitter birthmark of human identity, barrier to merging with all this, the real you. You watch the birth of the Smoky Mountains, the entire duration of the universe. You are present, untethered from your own landlocked self. For that tick of time, you feel the moment into which all time fits. Then you realize, I am pushing I on that swing. The blank space between those eyes is who I is. Number 105. When you close your eyes, you are riding a narrow trail on Nantahala steep forest slope. The pitch is so extreme, gnarled roots seem all that hold massive rocks in place. Sharp horse hoof jolts pound deep into the wet earth. Each step stops your plummeting into the churning river below. The sound of horsemen nears. You yield the trail to Atakulakula, astride his steed. He welcomes you as you follow William Bartrand through the woods. Atakulakula, Cherokee first beloved man, of small stature, astute, mature, notably wise. The horse is not just any horse. This is Buffalo Bill's white horse Brigham, or Neruda's honey amber of fire, or one of Malapart's horses who fled fire, plunging into icy Lake Ladoga to freeze solid, or Supervae's horse, mane wet, vowing one day to rejoin the sea's rolling waves. Thrums of the horse's heart so orotund, they echo deep inside you. This one horse, as all horses, are the true pioneers of America. His ethereal meadow flower breath as you greet him by inhalations, his meteoric snorts as he anabases. O horse of Atakulakula. We go on, traversing parterres, vistas, and verdant swelling knolls. The strong current of the Tennessee gives up a crossing. Climbing the bank on the other side, you are wondrously absorbed in the violet scarlet of ambrosial strawberries. They tint the hooves and ankles of the untethered horses now allowed repose. You recline next to Bartram in a meadow, eat ripe Indian strawberries. Nearby, splendid melagree, wild turkeys, and capricious roebucks meander tranquilly as you savor sun-warm fruit under radiant cerulean contemplation crisp skies. Suddenly, the warm flavor still lingering on your lips, you are violently seized and hauled back to the asylum. Not trusted at the inland facility, you are transferred to this annex at the Niobraran Sea. You amble out a side door into monstrous curling waves where you nuzzle into a profound contemplation. Deep in the ocean where no eye endures, only focused concentration, intense calm, soundless states of being. You explore non-thinking, roaming among modes of thought you never fully entered before. You wander royal palms, immense ancient banyan tree groves, and explore hectares of whimsical rocks. Violently, the nurse yanks you from the surf's thudding, convulsive gasps. What are you doing? He growls. I sojourned in Bartram's wild meadow, you utter. He scowls at you, irritated at having to endure your delirium. His disdain doesn't vex you. You, accustomed to adults without any sense of imagination. You look down astonished at your legs, fragrant, dyed red from the sea. My last one is number 62, a short one. There is no fixed point. We have left terrestrial life for the ark. Weather events prove shores become lagoons, valleys, river torrents, lakes, black seas. Earth is not a concrete flood control channel, but an enormous monarch butterfly perched on a blue spherical allium umbel. The movement of her wings synchronous with the slow pulsations of lungs, contented shutting and opening of heavy eyelids, heartbeats, tranquil breath, a rhythm in waters, palpitations. She rests in our cupped hands. Thank you.
Let us appreciate our poets once more. Thank you so much, class Pequeño, Glazier, and Danita, Dodson, Hilda Downer, and Elizabeth Wilson. So thank you so much for being with us. We have these books available. So now is the time to walk to the counter and get your copy and join us on November 5th for the last poetry reading of the year. Have a nice evening.